Thanks for joining us today. We'll let people kind of file in for a minute, but if you do want to let us know in the chat where you're coming to us from. I'm in Toronto. Nana is just outside. I guess technically still part of Toronto. Okay.
The greater GTA. We'll
The
go with
greater
that.
GTA. There you go. Otherwise, we'll get started in a sec.
Yeah, it's a beautiful
All right.
day. I'm so glad it warmed up again, Caitie.
I know.
I'm scared that fall was starting a little bit too soon, but we can't
Yeah,
end the summer without this webinar.
exactly. The perfect end to everybody's summer.
That's it.
Deep dive into recoverability. All right, well, why don't we get started? I'll kind of introduce us here. So my name is Caitie, and I work at Dext. I'm on the marketing team here. So I work a lot with our partners and app partners to create a lot of content, webinars. If you've gotten emails, they're probably from me. And so love kind of being here, chatting with people, finding out what you're struggling with, what are the wins of your businesses? How can me as an individual, how can Dext, how can kind of the community help people? So thrilled as always to be here with Nana. So Nana, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure thing. Thank you, Caitie. So my name is Guenther. I'm a CPA and I work here at Dex as a solutions consultant, because solutions expert basically means that I'm here to ensure that we continue to build products that solve real problems for accountants and that we really address what the practices are interested in and what the problems that they're really looking to solve. And we can be a big part of that community. So it's nice to be here with you again, Caitie.
Always. And thank you, Successful Bookkeeper, for having us.
Okay.
So I'll just run us through the agenda. We're going to obviously have a little intro kind of on the importance of recoverability, a term all of you are very familiar with, but I think as technology advances, there's a lot of different ways to kind of look at it in tandem with like what you're doing in your business. We're going to go through the factory, which is sort of a 6 stages of process improvement that we have. And then we'll look at the opportunity cost with automation as well, as nothing is ever free. And so when you're looking to save time, what are you trading off kind of in the meantime? And then kind of looking at technology. So looking at AI, accounting automation, and RPA, or robotic process automation, to kind of look at how those three facets really interplay with recoverability, specifically in sort of looking at how you can maximize your profit. So when we look at recoverability, it's obviously a term you're all familiar with. It's just the relationship really between that time invested and the revenue generated, and it seems like it's more crucial than ever. It's no longer not just about tracking time and billing, but it's really about optimizing every aspect of an accounting practice to ensure that the firm remains profitable and competitive, especially in what I think we can safely say is a rapidly changing environment. So let's take a look at sort of the key factors in the race for recoverability, let's call it. So increased competition. The accounting industry and bookkeeping industry is, I wouldn't say maybe more competitive than ever, but it's competitive, with firms striving to offer more value at lower costs. Probably people give a lot of discounts, which Nan and I have done webinars on pricing, and we'll say don't offer them up front, but a conversation for another time. But ensuring high recoverability really helps firms maximize the profitability from each client. And that in turn allows them to remain competitive, really without compromising on service quality, which is really important. Rising client expectations. Again, I'm sure you're all familiar. I think when we talk to a lot of partners and a lot of clients as well, clients really do expect that like super quick turnaround time. They want like the most accurate data, and they really want those proactive insights from their accountants. So really, in order to achieve high recoverability at this stage, like the more efficient your processes and your technology are, really helps firms meet these elevated expectations while maintaining your profitability. One thing I'll say, I should have said off the top, this slide deck is going to be a bit more like word heavy than normal. What we were finding was that for some of our topics, a lot of the conversation was kind of not off the cuff, but not on the slide or missed in like kind of the personal notes that don't get shared. And this topic, we just want people to be able to really like refer back to the pieces that are important. So there's going to be kind of more text on the slide, so you don't worry about reading it. You'll all get a copy of the slide deck, but as opposed to kind of bullet points and then expanding, we're just trying to include more of it up front. So I meant to say that off the top. One of the other aspects right now could be economic pressure. So the economic uncertainty, it's been an interesting few years, and inflation has been quite high, and in some regions higher than others. So it's no surprise that economic pressures absolutely play a role in not only accounting and bookkeeping firms, but also the businesses that they support. And so it's really putting a lot of pressure to control costs, improve your financial performance. I think the LP or operating profit kind of has become maybe an even bigger metric than it used to be. And specifically for accounting firms, means really maximizing the revenue generated from the billable hours and making sure it's essential to maintain those margins and grow in these challenging times. So businesses are really susceptible, unfortunately, in terms of economic turmoil and inflation to more closures. And so the role of the accountant and bookkeeper becomes really, really crucial at these times to be able to provide that data, provide that insight, and really help the businesses at the end of the day. Like these are all people businesses, right? You're working with your clients, you want the best for them. And so when you look at kind of the rising client expectations, a lot of times the accountants and bookkeepers are really taking that to heart, taking that on. Clients are maybe messaging you out of hours, and you want to respond because this is their livelihood. And if they run a restaurant, they're not working 9 to 5. And so you can kind of feel that pressure not to work 9 to 5 either. So a lot of this is about striking the right balance.
Yeah. And Caitie, I really wanted to compliment what you're saying here is sometimes accounting firms really struggle with conveying the value that we're adding to a business, right? Because some aspects of what we're able to provide from a reporting perspective really starts at the data that we're able to get into our technology, right? That we can use to report. And so, but getting that data in there is maybe sometimes not seen as value add from the client's perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so really what we're struggling with tends to be how can we convey the value and really articulate that to our clients so that we can effectively justify the prices that we're charging, or the fact that we do need to also increase our fees because we are also impacted by all these economic pressures, right? And so, I really wanted to add that on there as an overarching consideration as part of this whole webinar is the ability to really articulate the value that we bring to the table when we are seeing all these economic pressures.
No, it's a great point too. And a lot of small businesses, if they're looking to reduce costs, they might think I can, I can do bookkeeping, I can get my QuickBooks, my Zero license, I can kind of, muddle through it. But as we all know, it's not just about getting things into the ledger. It's where your expertise comes in and reading those numbers and being able to tell that story. Like that's why, you guys, you have letters, you have certifications. It's not just something that anybody can do. And I think I'm sure you've all taken on clients who've been doing their own books, and you do this absolutely massive cleanup job. And aside from just, maybe people aren't getting paid on time, there can also be a lot of risk, right? Risk of not being compliant, tax issues. And so it can be difficult to, what you're saying is conveying that value. And I think, when we get into it and we look at some of the tools, really relaying that value. Because also to your point, you telling a client this technology saves me time, that's not really a selling point for them. They're not super worried about your time. But if you can convey what you're doing with that time saved, this is what I'm able to do. I'm able to put together a business plan for you. I'm able to review XYZ. That's really where your value lies. So
Totally.
excellent, excellent. And of course, like one of the big issues in recoverability is technological advancements. So no surprise, automation and AI have transformed how accounting services are delivered. And those who are able to really capitalize on technology early are at a distinct advantage. And so if you leverage the technology and you're streamlining your operations, you're going to hear this a lot, reducing that manual work and that improved accuracy. All of these aspects enhance recoverability. And those who don't might find themselves at a disadvantage, and you could be unable to compete with other accounting bookkeeping firms on cost or service quality, again, in tandem with those rising expectations. Well, my friend's accountant is able to give them XYZ, and all I'm getting from you is, one line. So I think it's tough in this industry to really stay on top of all the different softwares, all the different advancements. You don't want to get, shiny object syndrome and buy 1,000 things, but it is really important to kind of stay on top and look for ways that you can consistently streamline your operations whenever you can. And then sort of before we jump into the factory, just the shift to value-based pricing has had a huge impact on the industry. I wonder if, I know there's a few of you in the chat, if any of you want to drop in, like if you're still using billable hours. We see, I think, other webinars, it can still be upwards of 70% of people are on a billable hour model as opposed to value-based pricing. But as more and more firms adopt value-based pricing models, the ability to efficiently manage time and resources becomes really critical. It's not just about the hours you're putting in. And so the high recoverability really ensures that the time spent on the fixed fee projects is minimized, and therefore kind of protecting those profit margins. So we do have a little example here as well. So example being a firm that traditionally focused on hourly billing shifted to a value-based pricing model supported by automation tools, and that provided the real-time insights into project progress, which is super important. This change led to a 15% increase in revenue per client and a significant improvement in client satisfaction due to the better alignment of services that the client needs. So 15% increase revenue per client is a huge number across your client base. And I think as technology advances and in the era of increased automation, a lot of people are seeing that the hourly billing is actually, they're being penalized for doing work faster and for being more efficient. So you're ending up with less revenue because you're doing something quicker. And that's really not fair, obviously, if you're doing the job. And so that's why you see this shift to value-based pricing or fixed or hybrid. There's a lot of hybrid models as well. And so it's really about trying to tie revenue to, or the billable system, sorry, is really tying the revenue to the amount of time spent rather than the value delivered. And as we look at, we'll chat through it later, different services that are offered, there's a real opportunity for accountants and bookkeepers to kind of set themselves apart through a value-based pricing model. And as technology continues and as everything continues to get more and more streamlined and reduces the time needed for these routine tasks, firms on a billable model are really at risk of earning less for the work they do. So that model really fails to capture the benefits and the efficiencies. So shifting to value-based allows firms that opportunity to just kind of really better align the revenue with the value they're truly providing. And this obviously helps ensuring recoverability. Nana, I know we've done pricing webinars before. I know you're kind of passionate about really explaining the value to clients as opposed to just like the time spent.
Absolutely, right. This perfectly aligns with what we were talking about a couple of slides ago. It's about the value you bring, right? It's not about how much you're putting in. And so really when we think about or reframe the services that we offer from that perspective, then it kind of paints that picture of maybe we should put in less, right? Or maybe, we should find a way to kind of automate some of what our inputs, because at the end of the day, the focus is on our outputs. The focus is on how we can drive value and make an impact on our client's business rather than the amount of time that we're spending to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfectly said. And then really just something to think about is when you're thinking about recoverability right now, it's not just about percentages. It's just really about ensuring that every task contributes to profitability by optimizing your already precious time and resources. So it's really about pricing and process. And it's not impossible, but it's difficult to get there with only one of these, right? So you really need to work in tandem with your process and your pricing just to ensure that you're able to maximize that profit there. So Nana, I'll let you kind of get into our factory model that we've got here.
Absolutely. So, when we evaluate the potential of new technology and automation, it's helpful to use this system called a factory model, right? A lot of you will understand it once I get into it. But think about a fast food restaurant. When you visit McDonald's, the whole process is planned in stages and it's delivered efficiently from the ordering to the making to the delivery. And so now imagine using similar standardized and efficient work processes in your accounting and bookkeeping practice. This will allow you to seamlessly move between different stages of the engagement from one stage of your client work to the next, free from error, right? Or at least feel free from material error. And this is what we call the factory. So similar to a fast food restaurant, each stage represents a different process needed to complete the task that an accountant or bookkeeper is engaged to do. So looking at work this way really helps you to understand which automation and technology can service your business at every stage. So let's dive into it.
Do it.
First and foremost, let's talk about the client onboarding and billing. This is where the customer arrives at your restaurant, right? And you meet and greet them and you ask them what they want to order. What are they looking for? Why are they here? So setting up and onboarding a new client can take time. And this time, which is often never recovered, right? Especially when you're thinking about billing hourly, that gets categorized. If you're doing timesheets, that gets categorized as admin time, right? And so think about all that happens at this stage, including inputting their personal and billing information and sending out the engagement letter. And there's plenty that can be done to automate those processes. So this includes the manual data entry, right? So ultimately, what this does is it reduces the risk of errors and it cuts down on the overall time spent from that engagement because this portion of it where it's difficult to bill them back for the time that you spent with the administration to just onboard them, right? So of course you want to automate those kind of processes as much as possible.
Yeah, I think a lot of clients would not want to be billed for onboarding.
Yeah,
That's not part of what they see. Is there's no real output there, right? As you're saying,
that's
it's
it.
like, so if it's not tied to an output, a lot of people won't want to pony up, for lack of a better term.
Of course. Right. And so next stage is talk about transactions gathering and the, again, quote unquote, raw materials, right? So we'll keep up with this restaurant analogy. So it's time to record what burger the customer would like, what services they would like, and then take their payment. For an accountant bookkeeper practice, this gathering stage involves putting together their client documents, purchase invoices, sales invoices, bank statement, supplier statements, and this can be an inefficient and time-consuming process. So just as it would be if you were to take a fast food order by hand, right? So using something like Dext Prepare, just as an example, can streamline this stage. So again, you don't have to worry about entering data into a field and then scrolling down, then entering another piece of data and scrolling down and entering that. And it's just really tedious. And again, think about if you wanted to have a conversation with your client about that input of your time, right? So much of the time that I've spent is to enter data and scroll through different screens. It's gonna be hard for them to justify paying you what they pay you, right? So that's what it's about. That's what we want to streamline those types of the raw materials gathering, if you will, for your accounting factory. Now, let's talk about this bookkeeping or manufacturing stage. It's time to cook that burger, right? At this stage, your firm is processing the information and making sure everything is reconciled. And accountants love to wreck everything, don't we? And so this is where you can use your accounting software solutions like Xero, QuickBooks, Sage to remove the most tedious element of the manual processing and reduce that possibility of human error. So Dex Repair, as an example, is something that integrates with over 20 different systems. So again, it just makes your business more agile to connect with or to work with different softwares in the ecosystem that can ultimately facilitate that manufacturing process for your bookkeeping firm. And always, 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 before we issue any final reporting, we want one source of truth, right? So quality control and assurance is really important. So that McDonald's burger, you want to make sure it's always the same. wherever you are in the world. That's why you recognize that brand. And this consistency is, again, built into their work processes because this is something that they identified as important to them. So for your practice, this stage is about checking everything behind the scenes and making sure it's free of error. So once you deliver a report to one stakeholder, it's going to be the same, fundamental data or underlying data as a report you deliver to another stakeholder, right? You certainly don't want to issue one source of truth and then find an error. That is really going to eat into your recoverability. So this is where, products like Dext Precision really make sure that that data quality, data validation is addressed before that final step. So let's talk about this next step, which is the verification stage. Now the food has to be cooked. It's time to bring together all the pieces and check it against the original order. So what is it that you are contracted to do? There's burgers and chips and drinks. And for your practice, the verification stage is where you're pulling together all the papers that need supporting documentation, the bank statements, the creditor's report. And it can be difficult compiling all this information manually, right? Chasing different paperwork, looking in different places. Is it in this email address? Was it sent to this inbox? Did I maybe get that via paper? It's a lot of documentation that we have to manage here. And so this can all be improved with automation, like automating bank feeds and storing information in the cloud rather than having documents dropped off, right? So technology can really help with all of these different stages. So of course, what do they really come to you for? What is this tangible product that they're paying you for? It's that client deliverable, right? So that's the customer's order is placed in front of them, providing them with quick and seamless service from the time they entered your restaurant. And so for your practice, that client deliverables are about completing the tasks you've been engaged to do for that better client experience. And this encompasses everything from the year-end accounting to financial management or information to business forecasting or, continuing to be able to advise them. And with automation and technology, clients do not need to see everything that has gone into the process. So as long as they are delivered an excellent end product, they don't care how long it took you, or they don't want the details of what went into it. Okay. They don't want to see the salt and maybe the sugar, right? It always sneaks in. They don't want to see all that. They want to see that end product. And that's what's going to wow them and say, oh my goodness, I'm so glad I paid you for this because I couldn't have delivered this product myself.
Yeah, I think that's again to your point on it, is just like it's the output. That is what the
Yeah.
client cares about. And to use, I love our fast food analogy, but it's like nobody wants to see how the sausage gets made, right? They just
No.
like just at the end, is this what I asked for? Is this everything I needed?
Yeah.
Perfect.
And is it delicious? Of
Yep.
course, right? So now what? What technology do you need, right? So we get this question a lot. And it's entirely dependent on the problem you are trying to solve, right? So if you can't define the problem, it's going to be difficult for you to try and solve it. So because you spend a lot of time implementing a system where you don't get the outcomes you expected or needed, but sometimes that might be because you didn't define the outcomes that you're expecting or the outcomes that you really needed, not just wanted, not just a nice to have, right? And so identify your problem and then think about the three necessary keys to success: accountability, that is measurability, and that is visibility. Accountability, when someone is accountable, they are ultimately responsible for the action or decision. So it isn't essential to differentiate accountability from responsibility because individuals who have been allocated the responsibility for completing the task are often not the ones accountable, right? So make sure you allocate accountability to the right person as a leader, you have to decide if that's you or not. Right? It's not always you who has to get your hands dirty. Sometimes you can, being the leader means acknowledging that you can't do everything. and you should trust a member of your team to be accountable or at least responsible for different aspects, right? Measurability, right? So in order to make sure the task is completed, you need to measure the task. Otherwise, how will you know that you've been successful? How would you know that it's been effective? So think of the scope of the project and what needs to be done to achieve those results that you need. And then put this in context of a schedule. So for example, how many clients do you want on Dext and in how many months? And, these numbers create accountability and healthy competition, right? So when you set a number, everyone knows what the target is and aims to hit that target. And so that cohesion really helps in terms of understanding not just measurability in terms of the metrics themselves, but communicating those metrics across your business. And finally, that visibility component is really important, ensuring that buy-in, right? The buy-in across the organization at different levels. And if everyone really understands what's going on, then they will be able to have the confidence in you to deliver. So real-time visibility also leads to improved decision making. So for example, you can decide if additional support is needed to deliver on the project. It also means questions are answered faster and more accurately. It really helps to identify problems within the project as you go along. So you can always take a really proactive approach to managing these engagements.
I think these are all, I mean, accountability, measurability, and visibility are important for, and not just when it comes to implementing the software, but in so many aspects writ large about your business. For me, I think measurability is kind of that key piece, because I think it's, especially if you're looking at it as a technology, oh, is it saving us time? And if you don't have numbers to back it up, if you can't say like what used to take us an hour now it only takes us 30 minutes, it ends up things can end up being more of a time suck than you think. And I think that measurability piece is sometimes the piece that gets kind of waylaid because it's just assumed technology saves us time, but is it saving you the time in the right area? I mean, they're all really important. You need accountability. You absolutely need buy-in and visibility. But I always think, we're numbers people. We all get measured. Everyone has KPIs in all of their jobs. Like the measurability piece is so important, and
So
especially when you're
key.
looking at new technology, because technology is expensive,
It's
and maybe over a
expensive.
year you realize it actually didn't equal out, and that's now a cost that maybe you can save. So I think especially the measurability piece, super super important.
Absolutely. And something else that's really important when we talk about that measurability is maybe that opportunity costs, right? And
Mm-hmm.
automation. So opportunity costs and automation are deeply interconnected concepts. And understanding how they relate can help firms make informed decisions rather about investing in technology to optimize those operations and improve profitability to ultimately stay competitive in this landscape, right? All the cool kids are doing it, but really trying to understand which problem they're trying to solve, and then what do they as a firm really get out of it. So in the accounting industry, opportunity costs of not automating routine tasks can be substantial, right? So by continuing to rely on manual processes, firms are risking losing out on time that could be better spent on strategic activities that really drive growth and profitability for their business. So as the name suggests, nothing is free. Everything takes time, but it's the reallocation of time elsewhere that is super important, right? So let's take an example of a firm that spends 15 hours manually inputting client invoices each month. By automating the process with AI-driven software, they reduce this time to just 2 hours. 2 hours. This frees up 13 hours per month. I know you can do the math here, right? So you can, with that 13 hours, you could do client consultations. You can ultimately maybe resulting in 20% increased billable hours, if you want to think about it in those terms, right? Because I know accountants, it's hard for us to get out of the billable hours framework. I do it, right? I started my career at a firm, and I will never forget what my charge out rate was. It was a lot higher than I actually got paid. But I always now think about the value of my time in terms of those billable hours. I could say 20% of it. I mean, I could do a whole lot, right? And that's what it's about. I could just take a break. And so when you're even thinking about the opportunity cost and automation, even think about the time that it takes to implement that automation, right? And so, sometimes we see firms who are hesitant to implement automation because they think, oh, I don't have the time to invest in the onboarding of this new technology and the training of my teams. Well, little do they know, or that might they consider that a lot of technology companies offer professional services for free, right? Or at different sizes of packages, right? And so ultimately take advantage of that. Take advantage of those into implementation services and that training for your team, or perhaps in some cases training for your clients as well. So ultimately you are realizing the efficiencies at your firm rather than focusing again on the inputs. It's not about the inputs. It's about what you're going to do with that result of everything that gets inputted.
100%. And I think too, when we look at like an example like this, if you think, oh, the technology is going to take me and my team like 25 hours, maybe it's 5 hour sessions. Seems like a lot. And I think one of the biggest objections that we hear when we go to trade shows, when we're talking to people, is like, I just don't have the time. Like, we know, right? Your time is already so precious and you're already strapped. But if you can free up 13 hours a month to bill elsewhere, in 2 months you pay for that technology. So I think it's really, you have to kind of find the time. I know I keep saying I've done a lot of AI webinars, and it's like, go out there and play around. And it's hard to find that time, but if you can find the time to do it, you can find the time savings like in spades afterwards. So, but
Mhm.
it's hard to kind of get over that because it's always busy. It's never a good time to burn your system to the ground and start up again by integrating a new piece. But I think if you've done, again, kind of looking back at the work back, is this going to be
Mhm.
helpful? Do we have the accountability and the measurability and the visibility in place? All technology is designed for the most part to save us time, but is that
Yeah.
actually working? Is that actually solving the problem that you have like today? The problem
Mhm.
that there's a lot of problems, there's a lot of solutions out there. There's 1,000 solutions out there, but those aren't always the problems you're having. So it's also just really important, as Nana was saying, to like dive into the problem, like solve that one first
That's
before
right.
kind of.
And Caitie, I really wanted to compliment what you said there about it's never a good time, right? You think about the typical busy season, right? January to maybe March, or sometimes it's dragging on till June, right? For self-employed, compliance requirements. Well, that's 6 months of the year. And as soon as that happens, whoa, it's summer. Summer is so busy
Yeah.
with the very variety of things. As soon as summer is over, well, it's September. We got to get ready for busy season again. And you know what? It is never a perfect time. And not just busy season, right? Like, think about December. December is always a write-off, right? So can you
Oh,
imagine? Really, it's about, drawing that line in the sand and say, okay, this is the problem that I'm having. It's solvable. I don't have to do all of it by myself. Right. So where can we get those inputs to finally realize those efficiencies and those results for our business that we've been looking for?
yeah. I mean, I'm sure everyone feels it. It's never a good time to go on vacation. It's never a
Mhm.
good time to buy a house. It's never a good time to start a new job, but you
Mhm.
find the time because it's like, it's what you need. It's what the
Mhm.
problem warrants. And so it's really important. And as Nana said, like most apps, most tech partners, they have incredibly robust onboarding. They have these professional services, like leverage those companies too. A lot of people just think they have to kind of do it alone or do it in a
Mhm.
vacuum. And that's not it. You can't, no one expects you to learn something like that on your own in a vacuum. So
Mhm.
absolutely always like leverage the companies you're working with as well. Um, so quickly we'll kind of talk about, one of the aspects I mentioned earlier, really trying to stay ahead in recoverability is with technology. And I think in the last 18 months, AI has exploded in a way that has become so accessible. And even though we've been using AI for decades, you've used Grammarly, you've got I won't say her name, the Amazon lady that lives in my home because she'll start talking to me. We've been using these things for years. And I think there's a lot of kind of AI washing where now you're realizing how much is AI, or companies are really promoting it. And it's just kind of always been baked in. It just wasn't something that people were super interested in, aware of, clamoring for. And really, I think we can kind of trace it back to when ChatGPT kind of last March really became publicly accessible to non-experts, to people. And so when we look at kind of AI specifically, it's kind of a no-brainer. Like if you've used ChatGPT or if you're using a desktop assistant or even an AI scheduling assistant, it's an absolute massive time saver on tasks, right? And it just kind of takes the headache out of a lot of things. It just takes a few things off your plate. The thing about AI that's different than say like a regular automation, because we've been talking about accounting automation for years as well, right? The difference in AI and the real advantage is in its ability to learn and adapt and improve. And automation isn't always doing that. The AI piece, that is what can do it. So if you think, for instance, in Dext Repair, as a North American business with a European headquarters, the date format is often, even between Canada and the US, right? Is are you month, day, year? Are you day, month, year? This was causing a lot of problems for people who are uploading invoices because if it was, 08, 09, is it September 8th? Is it August 9th? And so we've added this feature, honestly, due to partner demand and kind of got the fix in where now if say you're a month, day, year and your invoice came in that way, but Dext is day, month, there's now a date corrector and it'll say like, switch the date basically. If you click that, yep, I want to switch the date, the AI will learn that this supplier on this invoice, they go day, month, year, not month, day, year. And it'll remember. And the next time you upload an invoice, it should be correct. And so it's important also to hit that button. Don't manually change it. Like let the AI learn. And so you do it once and then it will learn for you. And I think that's kind of the really big piece of AI is that its ability to learn like from you. And so some of the ways that AI can now think, as it were, is, understanding conversations and language processing. That's really one of the huge pieces and the leaps and bounds. The desktop assistant, so being able to visualize a virtual desktop. These assistants now can see every single thing that is happening on your screen. You could be reading an article, you could be in a spreadsheet. The assistant is up and you can say like, synthesize the spreadsheet in words. What is it telling me? And there's your report, right? Because again, if you're numbers people, maybe you're not a word person and you have to convey something to a word person, it can read everything that's going on. It can synthesize an article that you don't have time to read. Give me the 3 bullet points, or does this relate to this? Do I have to read this? Mm-hmm. So the desktop assistants, again, leaps and bounds, I think, for the Excel piece alone, being able to ask query Excel to put it in words for you or vice versa is incredibly impressive. Understanding the documents and then finding its own tasks to automate. So like this is the learning piece. It's intense. And again, I think a lot of people don't have the time. I do not currently have a desktop assistant. I'm sure if I had one, I would find an incredible time savings. But like we're saying, I haven't taken my own advice. I just haven't had the time. I haven't had the time to learn, or I think, I need it. Is that where my time is best spent right now? Mm-hmm. And maybe for me, it's not. And for someone else, like now is the absolute perfect time. Mm-hmm. When we look at tangible examples, of sort of AI. For example, you might use AI to review client data and use it to find entries that have been duplicated, duplicate transactions, like find me right away, right? Like, I don't know how many of you've been in a spreadsheet. I know I've been in a spreadsheet where I've just manually typed an entry wrong or I've duplicated it and the numbers don't add up in the end. And going back to opportunity cost, no, and I'm sure it's happened to you. You just can't find where you went wrong. And goodness. You just have to spend, some sheets that we're in are huge and you just have to go back and manually look at absolutely every number you've inputted and you've missed a decimal, you've hit 2 ones, you've done whatever. It's tough. And so having all of this technology that's able to really spot those or just kind of query, be like, this looks like a duplicate. This looks like you're dealing in hundreds and it's thousands. So in Dext Precision, a lot of our products, the duplicate transactions, easy peasy. In Dext Repair, you can also kind of use the AI to categorize expenses and payments, again, to help improve the accuracy. I think, and Nana, we've talked about it before, but AI helps tremendously in improving compliance and in reducing the risk of fraud. I think that's one of the, unsung heroes, and maybe everyone is thinking about it, but I think it's that really reducing that risk of fraud, just being able to spot these anomalies that we don't always have time to just be staring at. And I think also in cash flow forecasting, incredibly important in cash flow forecasting, identifying when a business may run out of money and flagging that as a potential issue. For an accounting and bookkeeping practice, this warning system really allows you to talk through possible solutions with your clients, avoiding last minute decisions. For example, many practices have had situations where a client has called up one day and been like, I actually can't meet payroll next week. Now, if there's some proper systems in place, and I'm sure accountants and bookkeepers have been spotting this for ages as well, but having that AI be able to say, like, the way this business is trending, like, they're not going to be able to meet that payroll. And
Right.
you're going to have a longer window. You're going to have more time to coach your business. You're going to have more time to figure out what you can do to kind of meet those obligations. So it just allows you to have that conversation earlier and in a more controlled manner. So just really that ability to spot things before they become a problem is, to me, like the advantage. Like that's the bow on it.
Absolutely. Always, there's one of our customer success managers here always mentions if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready, right? I think
Yeah.
AI really helps us stay ready. So we're not always, even when we're offline, we don't have to worry about it because the AI is online. It doesn't clock out. And it's doing these checks and balances in the background, and you just come in to provide that professional oversight, the human oversight, right? And imagine just how freeing that can be for you as a business owner.
Yeah, exactly. And we've got a little example here, so I'll read it out loud. A global accounting firm used machine learning to analyze historical financial data, predicting cash flow issues for clients before they arose. This proactive approach helped clients avoid financial pitfalls, strengthening client relationships, and opening new advisory revenue streams. And I think it's important to note that it's not that humans can't do this. It's not that you can't go through your client's books and spot that there's going to be a shortfall. You just don't always have the time.
Mhm.
I mean, that's the crux, right? You don't have time to just go, you know what, I've got a few spare hours, why don't I just go do a comprehensive check of the books and make sure that, like, there's just not always time.
Right.
And the opportunity cost of doing it yourself versus the AI right now is just, it's kind of too much to bear. And again, right, nothing is free. You do need to prioritize the specific problems you're facing so that you can find the appropriate solution. There
Yeah.
are 1,000 solutions out there, and there's a lot of wonderful tools, and you'll see this practice management software, this workflow software, and think like, this is incredible, this will revolutionize my practice. Great. But if your workflow is working fine, maybe you don't need a new tool, right? And so I don't want to keep
Yeah.
harping on it, but I think it's just really important to, like, find the problem that you
Mhm.
actually really want to solve, because there's 1,000 solutions out there, and we can all kind of shoehorn in and say, oh yeah, that actually is a problem I'm having, or this tool will help address this. Is that an issue that is, like, your number one priority to address? So I think it's just really being aware and really
Yeah.
focusing on the problems where, like, where is your recoverability risk? That's
Mhm.
where you should be focusing.
Absolutely. And Caitie really wanted to touch on, this example that you gave of, am I going to spend the time, putting in the checks and balances and just having a general overview of the cash flow forecast. And yeah, sure, I could spend that time. And if it comes out with, okay, there's no issues, again, hard to articulate that value to your client. Right? It's almost like you are better off finding an issue because then you can tell your client, hey, I found this issue. But can you imagine then the AI can then do that the checks and balances and flag where there is an issue, right? And so you can go in and actually focus again on the things that are value add rather than these overarching tasks, which are necessary, but you might not be able to articulate that as a value add, right?
I think that's a really good example of, like, I wanted to double check the books and I didn't find an anomaly. You owe me 5 hours of
Right.
billing, because the client might be like, well, I didn't ask you to double check. I assumed you got it right the first time.
Right.
You're supposed to be inaccurate, and so that's,
Yeah.
again, that's where it's hard when you're in that model to really, it's like, well, I just spent that time. I guess that gets chalked up to admin, right? That is
Mhm.
non-recoverable time.
Mhm.
And that's always tough.
Yeah.
And then we'll quickly, as we kind of wrap up the last couple of pieces here, automation. It's a big word, and it's a really general term that refers to using technology to perform tasks without human intervention. We're all using it. Everyone is using automation software somewhere. And it obviously applies to a wide range of processes across various industries, from automating email responses and complex systems like automated manufacturing lines, right? Very different. when you integrate AI with automation, those systems can handle really complex decision making, and it can analyze that data and it can learn and improve over time. So they are slightly different, but we kind of talk about automation and AI in one single breath. And so just to kind of separate out a little bit, it's just that the automation is significantly enhancing the recoverability by improving the efficiency and accuracy and the effective use of time and resources, which really is what everyone is after. I'm not going to belabor all of these. I think when we look at 7 ways, there's more. These are kind of the 7 that we kind of thought boiled down the most in looking at how automation really improves recoverability. It's that time efficiency. It is that accuracy. If things are accurate, you do not have to spend the time checking. I think the enhanced capacity piece sometimes goes a little not untalked about, but I think when we talk about time saved, sure, now you're free to do more. Doing more might be going and having dinner with your family. It does not always require, or to me, lean right into an enhanced capacity to do more work.
Right.
But you can maintain your profit and work less, or you can increase your profit and work the same amount. So most of it for me is about building in that extra capacity, but it does not have to be used on work, right? It can be used on your life as well. And I think that's as important to mention. And then, opportunity cost reduction, of course, it's one of the big things we're talking about today. The better insights. I think everybody wants to know the story behind the numbers, and that is what you can provide that, business isn't often able to provide for themselves. And all of this also leads into client satisfaction and retention. This is primarily a number one, it's a people business. It's also a word of mouth business. You always just hear like, I'll give you my accountant, like I'll give you my lawyer, like I'll give you my doctor, my dentist. It's like, it's so word of mouth based, and you want your clients to be happy. And at the end of the day, like if you know that you're not losing any clients, you don't have to take on any more if you don't want to either. So I think really just providing that kind of elevates that client satisfaction piece. And then just optimize pricing strategies, right? When you look at, like, I know if we take something like precision, being able to stop like scope creep, when you get someone's books. And so then you can price somebody accordingly for an engagement, as opposed to not taking them at their word, but there's just a lot of technology that can really synthesize it and boil it down into kind of one line for you. And then real quick, I think RPA also, robotic process automation, kind of just gets lumped in, but it really is like when you think of RPA, think of a bot. Like that's exactly what it is. You can like set specific instructions and the bot will carry it out. So they're capable of sort of mimicking these human computer interactions, carry out these tasks error free at a high volume and speed, but it should not be confused with AI. I think sometimes it is, because it is just following a predetermined workflow. It's not learning, it is being set and then it is done. The implementation is quite different as well. It does require a specific platform, but it often integrates easier because you don't actually have to change like all of your existing workflows across all your apps. So it can actually be deployed rather quickly. So when we talk about that opportunity cost, this could be something, where you look to save some time and the implementation is a little bit easier. And then where do you put the bots? Where are you doing invoice processing, accounts payable and receivable, bank reconciliation, tax filing and compliance, and then payroll, or there are more buckets, but to kind of boil them down, these are a lot of the popular use cases for where somebody would maybe look to employ RPA over another automation software or AI. So that's mainly it. So Nana, why don't you take us through just a little bit here at the end? Dext, what's coming? Who are we? How do we help?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as we talked a little bit earlier, it's really important for accountants and bookkeepers to deliver one source of truth, right? That's the final product. That is why your client engaged you at all, right? But you can only do that if you have the information in your general ledger, right? So there's so many different ways that the data can come in. It can come in via a mobile app at Dext. Data can come in via an email, custom email address at Dext, maybe drag and drop from your desktop or your laptop, I should say. Maybe different integrations like our invoice fetch, where an example, we can connect to Amazon Business, right? And then automatically pull those costs on a regular basis without having to go through your client as a middleman. So there's several different sources. What this does is provides you with the agility with which to engage in different client behavior. So maybe some of your clients who are always on the go, they might love a mobile app, right? Because just take a picture of a receipt or an invoice and then they move on, right? And ultimately, what that does is facilitate that better communication with your client, which they always appreciate because and they always see that, it's smooth service that you're providing them as quality service. Again, that email in method is really popular. Maybe you set up something like AP at Caitie at Dext.com, right? And so ultimately you provide that to your vendor, or your client's vendor rather, and the vendor themselves get that information into Dext. And again, your clients themselves can be hands off. You as the bookkeeper can be hands off, and that information can be auto-published into your general ledger if that's what you so choose, right? So Dex again focuses on the data capture, the data automation, the health insights, and the practice productivity. It's great. Now you have all the data, you have all these different ways to get the data into the system. What are you going to do with it, right? So as we talked about, you don't just want to add on another technology. You want to make sure that it's actually doing something for you, right? You want to make sure that it's giving you, delivering value to you. And that value might be in those automation rules that you can set up within Dex, right? So where you can see, how many of a particular client's documents have been set up for auto-published or for auto-categorization or have been subject to the different automation rules that are available, again, once you've captured that data, right? That's where it all starts. You have to get it in. And so, that's what Dex really facilitates, right? And at the end of the day, we integrate with several different platforms. We really partner with our platforms such as Xero and QuickBooks to ensure that, that experience, that cohesive experience is as positive for the accountants and bookkeepers who utilize each of our products individually, right? So it's making QuickBooks better, it's making Xero better, and it's making Dex better at the end of the day, right? So the overall experience within that ecosystem for your firm is that ultimately delivers what we all want to do, which is that automation so that you can really focus on delivering that value for your clients at the end of the day. That's what it's really about for accounting firms. So thank you so much for joining us today. I think we're right on time, Caitie. And
Yeah,
Caitie, I really appreciated the opportunity to, again, engage with the accounting and bookkeeping community here to deliver this value, really talk about how they can ultimately realize the most and recover the most out of their firm.
absolutely. Thank you, Nana, and thank you, Successful Bookkeeper. We do have a few minutes if anybody has any questions or anything that we can help answer.
And again, the slides will be sent
Yeah,
after this webinar. So I hope that you all enjoyed it, and I hope that you can follow along, and it's a good resource for you.
awesome. I guess that's it. Thank you, Nana. I hope everyone has a great rest of their day, great weekend, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.